our guest speaker, who I'm sure you're all excited to hear about.
Thanks.
So Father in heaven, we thank you for this time. We thank you for the life breadth and the vision that you have given Donnie D. And we thank you for his sharing it with us today, and ask, Lord, that you would just bless our hearts and that we would walk away changed. So, amen. Donnie D. You probably know about him or of him or have met him. But in case you don't know, he used to be in NFL. His dad played in the NBA, I'm told, and his son plays professional basketball in Spain. Worked 25 years for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. God called him to the rescue mission several years ago, and he's currently the president and CEO of San Diego Rescue Mission. He's a leading spokesperson for the homeless crisis in San Diego, and a core mission partner for our church, and a good friend of Jack and Jan. Yeah. So we all please help me welcome Donnie D.
Hey. Thanks. What an honor to be here and a privilege. And I was just hoping somebody would show up when the teacher's not here. And I know Bill wasn't going to be here today. He asked me if I would pinch hit, and I said, well, sure. And so then word gets out that he's not going to be here, and nobody shows up. And then I show up and nobody shows up, and then I take it personally, and I start to question my calling, and then I get out of the ministry, and then, just think of how important it is that you showed up today. I mean, you kept something very catastrophic from happening, but thanks for just the opportunity to share and for sticking around after service. I would guess you were part of the first service, and Bill asked me to share a few things from God's word and just how that relates to homelessness, and honored and delighted to do that. Love the Hones and love this church. This church has been involved in what I have been doing from a ministry standpoint for 20 some years when I was with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And then about 5 years ago, I jumped into the deep end and decided I would try to help figure out this homeless problem. And that's what I've been doing the last 5 years. And the Hoens and so many other couples here at this church, and Jack and Jan and Neil, and just have been incredible supporters of ours. As a matter of fact, we probably have 100 churches that do something regularly at the San Diego Rescue Mission. We probably have 25 that we would put in the all-star category, and then we would put the Village Church in the top 2 or 3. So thank you guys for helping us do what we do.
Thanks for coming out this morning.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I was looking forward to this. I was 2 things: looking forward to seeing Tiger play this weekend, and I was looking forward to speaking to you guys. So it's going to be a great weekend. Bill asked me to pinch hit, and so looking forward to do that. Looking forward to doing that. I think what I really want to do is drive one of his cars, and so hopefully this will lead to him trusting me a little more, and then him giving me one of his cars for the weekend. We have lunch periodically, and we always take his car. And man, he's got some cars. He's got some cars, and I haven't gotten him willing to give me one for the weekend for a date night, but I'm working on it. So today is the one step towards this master plan of driving one of those $200,000. Don't tell him that. One of those $200,000 Mercedes. How many of you were born and raised in San Diego? This is home. Been here your whole life? Okay. No doubt. Lucky you. How many of you been here 30 years? Yeah, so most of you. Yeah. I've been here about 30 years. And so whether you've been here 5 years or whether you're born and raised here, I think we all know we have a homeless problem. And it must break your heart, especially if you're born and raised here, to just see America's finest city deteriorate and wonder what's working and what's the issue, and why can't we seem to get our arms around this? And we're not going to solve it today, and we're not going to ever eliminate it, but I do think there are solutions. And I hope today that in the few moments we spend together, that you'll be encouraged that there are some things that will work. Unfortunately, I think we're doing so many things to make the problem worse that we have to kind of overcome that in order to make some progress at changing the state of homelessness. And I'm probably not going to get into a lot of that today, but it has a lot to do with just politics and what the government is doing and what the government is not doing. And look, if you don't hear me say anything else in the few moments I have to share with you, I hope you hear me say this. This is not a government problem to fix. They can't fix this. There's too many hands in the cookie jar. There's too many people that are more concerned about image than impact. This isn't about changing the situation. This is about making yourselves look good. And unfortunately, the problem's getting worse, and we are ignoring people who are living on the streets. And I think COVID exposed us. I think that we knew we had a homeless problem, but because there's so many people living month to month and so many people bouncing around on couch to couch, COVID put all those people out on the streets. And I think in 2 years, we've gone from 10,000 people living on the streets to 23,000 people living on the streets, give or take. There's no way to know exactly how many people are living on the streets at any given time, but as somebody that's in this space as a service provider, we estimate over 20,000 people living on the streets. I stopped calling it a problem. I don't call it a problem. I don't call it an issue. I think we have a humanitarian crisis. So I'm gonna call it what it is. There's a humanitarian crisis right here in our own city that they've been calling America's finest city since before you were born here. America's finest city, and we have a humanitarian crisis. So what are we gonna do about that? Well, let me give you some facts. There's about 160,000 people who are defined as homeless throughout the state of California. We would say it's much higher than that, but that's what the government would tell you. In San Diego, we think there's 23,000 people who are defined as homeless in San Diego. And one of the challenges is that we are the state with the most unsheltered. In the entire United States of America, we have the most unsheltered of the homeless of any other state. And it's not just because we're bigger and there's more people living on the streets. It's about how many people are homeless and how many people are those in shelter. So that allows us to compare with smaller states too. It's about the number of people who are unsheltered relative to the total number of people who are homeless. So there's a reason for that. And it's not just because the weather's nice and they can sleep outside. And that myth, that statement that you've heard that the cold weather states are sending their people here on buses just isn't true. I meet with every new person we bring in off the streets every week, Thursdays at 2:30. And I ask them their name, where they're from, and why are you here? And I've not had one person in 5 years tell me, my city council bused me here from Minnesota. Not one. I've not heard one person say that I showed up because the weather's warm. As a matter of fact, 76% is a fact of the people who are homeless became homeless while living in San Diego. So these are our neighbors. These are our people. These are kids we went to school with. These are people that had jobs here, and had marriages here, and had families here, and actually worked here. And yes,
It's such an important message to communicate for us all to realize these are our neighbors.
yeah, it is. It is. And I think that's a part of what we've realized as an organization is we got to change the narrative, because there are some myths and some assumptions that we make about people living on the streets. And you know how I know that? Because that's a part of why God called me to this, is he wanted to change my perspective about this population. And I was completely wrong. Nobody chooses homelessness, and it's not just because they want to use drugs and alcohol, or they don't want to work, or they're irresponsible. There is something that went on in their life. Every single one of them. There's a story there that something happened in their life that they've never been able to get over. And let me just jump into that for a second. Let me give you two stories. One, Neil. I had a chance to spend some time with Neil. He just graduated from our program, and I asked him, I knew his challenge was alcohol. And I said, well, when did you start drinking? Because I'm sure that my whole thought process, when you started drinking, you never imagined that someday it would destroy your life and you didn't know how to shelter. Sort of where I was getting at, but he just said, I started drinking when I was 5. And I was like, come on, Neil, how do you even know that you were drinking when you were 5? I mean, you went to the cabinet. My mind just starts racing. You jump to kind of fill in the blanks. He said, no, it wasn't that at all. He said, I don't remember drinking when I was 5, but my mom apologizes to me every time she sees me because she thinks she's the reason why I'm a lifelong alcoholic. I had severe asthma as a little kid, and the only thing that would calm me down and put me to sleep was a little shot of whiskey in my sippy cup.
Wow.
I know. What chance did this kid have? His whole body and makeup was dependent upon alcohol. He grew up with a need to control what was going on inside of him, and alcohol is what did it for him. Sarah was 34 with a 14-year-old, so she got pregnant when she was 20. in our program. She's since graduated, but once we dug into her life a little bit, we found out that when she was 12, her and her mom were running from domestic violence. They finally got away from the guy through some legal maneuvering and made sure that he would never show up again. And I don't know if if her mom was married to him or if it was just a boyfriend, but regardless, he was beating up on them. And so they were bouncing around from shelter to shelter. And they finally got healthy enough and well enough to move out on their own. So they found an apartment in a school district and they moved in on the weekend. On Monday, this girl who's now in our program, 34 years old, is telling us that she went to school that next day on a Monday, came home from school at the end of the day, and her mom was gone. And here she is now, 34 years old, and she has never seen her mom. Doesn't know where she's at, doesn't know she's alive, doesn't know, do I matter to you? Are you healthy? Are you alive? And these are things that you can't make up. And so she spends 20 years of her life trying to figure out, do I matter? And do I have value? And making choices and making decisions to kind of validate her existence. And many of those were bad decisions. So all that to say that we're going to change the state of homelessness at the San Diego Rescue Mission. And look, we're not the only game in town. It's not a competition, but we are going to control the system of care for people experiencing homelessness. And I'm going to show you our plan before we leave today. But before I do that, I want to show you something in John chapter 5, which is a great story and a miracle of Jesus that we use all the time as it relates to making sure that our students that come into our program have the right attitude. I have a 100,000 square foot facility in downtown San Diego. We have 360 beds. 300 of those beds are now set aside for faith-based rehabilitation. 12 months. You get to live with us for 12 months. Doesn't cost you anything because we have churches and donors and events and foundations and corporations that put us in a position because they want to help you. So take advantage of that. I told a class the other day, I said, in that welcome meeting, I said, we have 29,000 active donors that gave to us last year, from $5 to $1 million. Now, most of them are 500 and less, but it adds up. I said, we have 29,000 active donors that gave us $11 million last year. I said, do you know why they did that? And this gal that was sitting across the table said, for us? I said, that's exactly right. They gave that money and they give their time for you. Question is, will you take advantage of it? They want you to get well. There's a whole community out there that doesn't want you living on the streets, but you're going to have to put in the work. And that's what John chapter 5 is. Afterwards, Jesus returned to Jerusalem for one of the Jewish holy days. Inside the city near the sheep gate was the pool Bethesda. You guys know this story, with the 5 covered porches. Crowds of sick people. So kind of imagine a tent encampment, right? Crowds of sick people, blind, lame, or paralyzed, lay on the porches. One of the men lying there had been sick for 38 years. Now, we don't know if he was born that way or if it was just most of his life, but that's a long time to not be able to move, to be sick, to wonder about life and will I ever change and can I ever change? And is this just the way it's going to be for me? And he'd been lying there for 38 years. And when Jesus saw him, and one of the things we tell our students all the time is that Jesus sees you. Jesus is aware of your situation. You're not lost on him. You're not hopeless. He understands what you've been through. He understands where you are today, and he actually understands what he'd like to do in your life going forward. That's a guarantee. That'll never change. Now, whether or not you receive that and believe that's a whole nother question, but just know this, he sees your situation. Then it says that when he saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, he asked him, and I always ask the students, what did he ask him? And what did he say to him? And somebody always says, take up your mat and walk. And I say he did say that, but it's not what he says first. What he says first is, do you want to be made well? And look, I would never question Jesus, but it seems like a strange question. It really does. I've been here for 38 years. I'm around a whole bunch of other people who are sick. As you read on through the story, you know that an angel of the Lord stirs up the water and first one and gets healed. And his problem is he can't move. So every time he tries to get in, someone gets in there before him. So it seems like he's in the right place. Seems like he's there for the right motivations. Seems like he doesn't want to be that way. I mean, it seems to me that he's trying. But do you really want to be made well? And I ask the students, why would Jesus ask him that? Why would Jesus ask him that question? And I think it's because, and we bounce it around the circle and I get all kinds of responses, but, and I don't know for sure, but my sense is that Jesus just wanted to make sure that he knew what was going to come with being made well. It ain't gonna be easy. Do you really want this? Do you really want this? This is all you've known for 38 years. You've kind of figured out how to do life. It's not ideal. You wish it wasn't this way, but this is it. And you've kind of just sort of figured it out. Do you really want with what comes with being made well? Because you're going to walk and you're going to work and you're going to have people asking you questions, and there's going to be responsibilities, and there's going to be pressure, and it's going to look a whole lot different than it has for you the last 3 years. Do you really want that? That's what we tell our students. Look, we guarantee you we'll get you off the streets, but do you really want this? Because it's going to take work. There's no magic to this. Yeah, there's transformation that Jesus does in your heart, but what we have to offer, there's no magic. It's just a program. And we're going to put you in classes, and we're going to rehabilitate you, and we're going to figure out what you need to get well. But do you really, really want this? Because if you really, really want this, you can get off the streets.
But Donnie, that transcends the homeless.
It does.
That phenomenon
Absolutely.
applies to a lot of people.
Absolutely. 100%. Because we get stuck in our ways. And I think what's also interesting here is that in verse 7, after he asked him, would you like to get well? Or why would you like to get well? Or do you really want to be made well, depending upon your translation? He just says, I can't, sir. I can't. And when you see somebody that's living on the streets, I hope you know that in their mind, that's what they're thinking. I can't. It's not that they want to be homeless. There isn't anybody that chooses that. I promise you. There really isn't. We have 5 years of experience at this. I realize I didn't know anything about it prior to that, but I've learned so much in 5 years, and nobody chooses homelessness. They're broken. They are broken people that have dropped anchor and surviving. And have you ever noticed that so many of them are by themselves? Have you ever asked yourself why? You know, if I were homeless, I think I would build a team. Maybe it's the athlete in me. I don't know. Maybe it's the athlete in me. I don't know. I build a team, and we look out for each other, and we probably put up some fencing, and we have our own little area, and we do shifts, and someone go get some food. I mean, I have some structure to it, I think.
Is there any hierarchy in the homelessness?
There is
I
in
talked to
areas,
a
for
few
sure.
that
Yeah.
kind of indicated there might
Yeah,
be.
there is in areas. Fun story about a guy in Little Italy that'd been homeless for 20 years. We're doing outreach down there, and he was clearly the kingpin and the guy that sort of made sure everybody was taken care of. And on Friday, so 2 days ago, we got him into housing. After 20 years, we got him into. He'd been on the street for 20 years, and we got him into housing. Now, it wasn't easy, but he's been working the program. He wasn't actually in our 12-month program. We were doing some different things with him, but we actually got him into a house, and he only pays $55 a month because of all the government subsidies. $55 a month. So if he can do that with his disability income that he gets and make his payments, and he's got a place to live. I can't.
Donnie, your story there from John, right? The pool of Bethesda.
That's right.
And it bubbled up, and people would jump in and
That's
get
right.
healed. And he couldn't, because he couldn't get to it. He
That's
couldn't
right.
Go fast enough. And so this I can't mentality on the street,
That's right.
they're beaten down. They're still, we can help them get better.
That's right.
But we have to understand that.
That's
they
right.
Can't. And why is that so prevalent? Something happened. Everybody has their own story, I
Yeah.
guess, that beat them. And
Yeah.
that's why they ended up on the street. And that's the I can't
Yeah.
statement, no matter what it is. And so what is your
I would-
best
Mhm.
help?
It's a great question. And you teed that up well for me. I didn't even ask you to, but the biggest obstacle for people living on the streets to overcome is not drugs and alcohol. We can get you sober. I mean, you're going to have to make a commitment, and it's going to be a lifelong battle. When you leave our building to go to a doctor's appointment or go to your job or you're out on a pass to see your family, when you come back into the building, you get breathalyzed. And if you blow numbers, you get your stuff and you leave. They know that. We do random urinalysis tests every week. And if you test positive, then you get your stuff and that you leave. And so there's a lot of accountability. There's a lot of structure. We can get you sober. It's not that they need to get a job. We have a whole job training program that we put people back in school, and they get certified in plumbing and auto mechanic and office assistant and electrical and welding and a whole slew of job skills. That's not the biggest obstacle. The biggest obstacle to overcome for somebody living on the streets, and I want you to think about this next time you see somebody, is shame. 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 I had a guy tell me that was in our program, he'd been there about 3 months, so relatively new. He said, you know, the first thought that comes to my mind every morning when I wake up? I said, I can guess, but no. He said, look what you've done with your life. Look what you've done with your life. So if that's your outlook every morning when you start your day, what do you think your day's like? And that is why they're walking around by themselves. Nobody understands. Nobody's been through what I've been through. I'm going to show you our plan, because our plan really involves graduates being involved in outreach, because they've overcome what they're thinking is impossible. And the reality of it is that we all have a lot more in common than we realize. And there isn't anybody on the streets that's been through something that nobody else has ever been through, but they think they're stuck. I can't. They don't think anybody cares, and they don't think that anybody's ever been through what they've been through. And that's just not true. So part of what we have to overcome is that. So that's sort of where we start, is just, do you want this, and kind of understanding that they don't think they can change. And that's an uphill battle. I mean, I'm telling you, we have 50% of the people that start our program, finish our program, 300 people in that program right now. Of the 50% that don't finish, they leave in the first 60 days, because we figured that out. If you get through the first 60 days, you graduate and you're on to living life sober, healthy, working, reconnected with your family, reconnected with your church. And I want to lay out for you what I think the different approaches are, so that you can see just some solutions, because I want you to be encouraged. There's a difference between meeting the needs of the homeless and addressing the needs of the homeless. And most of what we're doing as a society is meeting the needs. We should do that. These are daily meal services. These are shower trailers. These are clothing distribution. This is outreach hygiene kits. This is medical vans that are traveling around. These are people that, just generous people that are dropping off tents and baskets of food and just trying to make your situation not so hard. We need to do that. But look, if that's not connected to something that is ultimately going to change their situation, then let's just all accept that this is helpful, but it's not impactful. It's not changing anything. There's a difference between relocation and rehabilitation. Those hotel vouchers that we've been using in every little city, all we're doing is relocating. And I know that there's not a mayor in town that would say that's a bad idea. Yeah, because you just got them off the corner where you've got your busy business that doesn't want to see them. I get that. Is that better than sleeping on the streets? Yeah, but you're not changing anything. People have got to be rehabilitated. In a healthy way, we call that discipleship. How many of us have mentors? How many of us have had somebody pour into our life? How many of us would say that we wouldn't be where we are today if somebody hadn't walked alongside of us? That's what rehabilitation is. There's a difference between meeting the needs and addressing the needs, relocation, rehabilitation. There's also a difference between public funding and private funding. I would tell you that government funding is the elephant in the room. I would tell you that that is the challenge that we have to overcome. And it's too bad, because those resources could be deployed to really connect some of these things so that we could get people off the streets permanently. But check this out. If you're a service provider and you're getting a government grant to do this very thing for people living on the streets that you want to do, and you celebrate that you got the grant, and now you go to do the work, what becomes the priority about 6 months in? All right, I get the grant again. I've hired people, I've leased office space, I got payroll, I got health insurance, and the compliance. Ask any organization, Father Joe, and this, I'm not talking down on them, because we need everybody doing what they're doing. Father Joe's, Alpha Project, Interfaith, ask those guys that take government funding and ask them about how much time they spend in compliance.
So do you not take government funding?
Not a dollar.
Do not apply, is that a choice that you don't apply for?
Well, we don't get to tell people about Jesus if we take government funding, and we actually think that that's who's ultimately going to change your life. So we don't take any government funding.
Joe's, who you said that they take funding, I thought they were a Catholic organization.
Who?
Father Joe.
Joe's.
They are.
So how can they get funding? Do they not talk about?
Because the faith piece isn't mandatory. Like
Isn't
our
mandatory.
students have to go to devotions every morning, whether they want to or not.
So that's part of their sobriety.
That's
The breathalyzer,
very much so. That's right.
the Time, the word,
That's right.
and a certain light.
They have to go to chapel. We check them in and we check them out. Now, look, we tell them day one, we're not going to beat you over the head with the Bible. You're not going to hear anybody preach hellfire and brimstone. Nobody's going to point their finger at you until you're going to hell. We don't do it that way. We are going to open up God's word, though, and we are going to tell you what it says because we think it applies to every situation of your life. And that's how we see life change.
So how do people come to you as opposed to somebody?
Through our outreach components. Also, people on the streets know where the services are, more so than we do. They do. They know how to survive. And what you would hear about our program from the average person on the streets is we're too spiritual and we got too many rules. And I'm not apologizing for either one of those, because if you really want to get well,
Those people are saying, I can't,
those people are saying, I can't.
I can't.
You're selling divine truth, not dogma.
This is what it is, right?
I
So,
I had the opportunity to speak with homeless through Rancho Santa Fe Rotary. We work with third Saturday, at least before COVID, and I don't know if you know Derek, but just where we set up tables for some clothing and food once a month. And you're right. Of course, they all know where where we're at, and where the next thing is.
Yeah.
But when you never forget the conversations you have
yeah,
with some of the homeless, and they will just tell you where they're at.
Yeah.
And some of them are, for lack of a better word, just crazy. And you go, okay, well, I understand that. And
Yeah.
it's amazing how the other homeless will get them in line if they're acting up. But this one lady, she called herself Jiminy Cricket from New Orleans, and she came here after Katrina. She had a little bicycle, and she was telling me, and she sounded very normal to speak with. And she was talking about her last job, and then she just admitted, she goes, it's hard for me to go get a job and just, I mean, I'm successfully living on the streets now. And what is my job gonna be? Me trying to support an apartment? All my resources would be going to paying a rent. She goes, and that's just not in the cards for me. But then she said something to me that I'll never forget. She goes, in my personality, she goes, I'm only good for about 2 or 3 days within the employer before I tell them right where to go. And I have no break up here to stop that.
yeah.
She goes, so I that's always coming.
Mhm.
And so I never, then I wondered how common
Yeah.
that might be.
Yeah,
And the last thing is, I saw a guy entering the park where we were at, and he looked like right out of central casting for Ivy League. He had a V-neck sweater, nice blonde hair pack, almost like a California-ized Harvard guy. And I said, oh, he must run the program. They go, no, he's homeless. He's been around for years. You're kidding me.
Wow.
It's very disturbing when you run into normal-looking people that are homeless. It's very disturbing.
yeah. So let me show you what we're gonna do, just so that you have that in mind, and then let you guys ask some questions. But last thing is just John chapter 9 is the story of the blind man, and it takes up the whole chapter, which I think is significant. That this guy was son of minding his own business, and Jesus spits in the ground, puts mud in his eyes, and tells him to go and wash, and he goes and washes his eyes, and he comes back seeing. And sometimes wonder, what if he wouldn't have gone and washed? Well, we wouldn't have a whole chapter in the Bible about it, you know. And what if we don't get involved in this? What if they don't come into our program? What if we don't engage people living on the streets? Well, nothing changes, and there isn't anybody that wants nothing to change. I also think about how he went back to his home, and his family and his friends just didn't even recognize him, and he didn't even know what happened to him. All he could say was, I met this man named Jesus, and he told me to go and wash, and I was blind, and now I see. That's just that was his testimony. And I actually believe that if we can do something with this homeless population, that the non-Christian world will want to know what happened. And the answer will be, I don't even know what happened. We just kind of all got involved, and we decided we were going to serve and not judge. And Jesus started changing people's lives. And this person was homeless And look at them now. And I think that's our hope, is that somebody who is broken can see that God takes broken things and he fixes them. And as crazy as this is, and they don't believe this day one, but he takes broken things, he fixes them, and then he uses that in other people's lives. The very thing that you would never want to go through again. And if we took the time to share testimonies today, there's probably some stuff you all been through that you go, man, that's the hardest time of my life, but I just have seen how God has used it once I've overcome it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build a system, because there's a difference between meeting and addressing. There's a difference between relocation, rehabilitation. There's a difference between public and private. And look, there's a difference between providing services and building a system. And I think if the elephant in the room is government funding, then the big aha for me after 5 years is this. The homeless are falling through the cracks of all the services that are being provided. We don't need any more services. They need to be better connected. I don't work together with Father Joe's. I don't work with Interfaith. I don't work with, it's not by choice. It's that we're all so busy with our head down, kind of overwhelmed with this population we're working with. And we have different approaches. We have different philosophies and different principles, and how we bring those together is tricky. And so we just decided that, look, we're going to partner with anybody and everybody that we believe really cares about the homeless, but we're going to build a system. And that system looks like this. And it came to us during COVID. It's called Operation Navigation. It was called Operation Expedition, because we just decided we were going to go out from downtown and we're going to figure out what the needs are. We merged with Bread of Life in Oceanside, and that led us to have some conversations about, we need beds. So we started looking for beds. This graphic became a graphic in January of 2021. So what is that, 14 months ago? We didn't have anything lined up. And in 14 months, let me tell you what God did, because this is his vision, is that we've signed a service agreement with the city of Oceanside. And in the next 3 months, we'll have a 50-bed shelter in Oceanside that will be a 30-day stay. It'll allow us to get people off the streets immediately into this 30-day shelter, with the hopes that for many of them, they'll end up in our 12-month program downtown. They may need detox. They might need a skilled nursing facility. This program isn't for everybody. We don't have nurses or doctors or, any sophisticated medical equipment in our facility. It's just an old hospital that has a bunch of rooms and people are getting up every day and going to class. 30-day stay. We own a property now. We closed on, this has been in 12 months. We closed on an 8-acre property in National City that has 30,000 square feet of building space, and have gotten a unanimous approved conditional use permit from the city of National City to run a 162-bed facility that is in the design phase right now. We don't have to build anything, but it needs a lot of love. We need bathrooms. We gotta put new flooring and wall coverings, and we gotta strip out the classrooms and do a lot of work to it. But this will be online probably early 2023. East counties will be TBD. Once we get these two things online, then we'll start to look at East County. We want these 3 orange buildings, which are temporary 30-day stays, to be the way that we get people off the streets immediately, so that I can say to you, you don't have to sleep here. The reason that we lead the nation in number of unsheltered is that there's not enough shelter beds. There's not enough shelter beds, because tell me a city from San Francisco to Chula Vista that wants to put a shelter along the coast. Yeah. Where all the homeless are. Nobody. The land's too expensive, and the property values are too high. So the fact that we have these two is nothing short of a miracle. Really, it is. I'm in awe of what God did, and I wish I had more time just to tell you how we got these, because they are a testimony in itself. So we're not going to provide. This isn't about providing services; it's about building a system. And here's your system. Okay. 23.
Before you begin, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Is this on your website by any chance? Or I was going to take a picture of them when we're through.
Yeah, sure. And I can send you attachments of both of these, but
okay.
It's not on our website because it's still so new.
I didn't mean to.
But no, that's all right. 23,000 people living on the streets. We're going to begin to do more strategic outreach, and we're going to do that primarily through a shower trailer ministry.
Yeah,
We figured that out last year. We partnered with another organization at Bread of Life. We didn't have beds because we're trying to get set up over in Oceanside. And so we just said, hey, why don't you bring the shower trailer over here? And for 10 months on Thursdays, from 8 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, we offered free showers. We gave 1,100 showers, and 50 of those ended up in our long-term program downtown. And we weren't even really trying. I mean, it really wasn't that sophisticated. I didn't even have any beds. These are just people that came right in off the streets. So the shower trailer will be our primary form of outreach, and we will travel around to 10 encampments. We'll travel around, we'll partner with churches, we'll partner where the homeless are congregating so we can build relationship. This is a relationship game. Once they know they're cared for, they can trust us, that there is a plan, that that what they've been through, other people have been through, then we'll get them into the 30-day stay. It'll be at the 30-day stay that we just do triage. It's not a lot of expectations. You're going to sleep, you're going to eat, you're going to shower, but you have to see a case manager. And it'll be through that case management that we'll figure out where you go next, because you're not going back to the streets. Many of them will end up down here, and they'll go through our faith-based 12-month program. Mission Academy is what we call it. And we call them students. There's 3 semesters, 300 beds set aside for that. First semester is wellness, second semester is education, third semester is job placement and housing. And you go through that as slow or as fast as you want, but you got 12 months. You're on a meter. Once you graduate, you become a part of a family called Alumni Ambassadors. We launched that in April. No, we launched that last October 1st. I hired somebody who's a former graduate, and I said, look, they're out there. They've been through our program. They're doing well. Build me an army is what I tell her every time I see her. Build me an army of graduates, because these graduates, we got a lot invested in. We send them a text every day. 150 that are in that group right now. Every day they get a text from us. Make the right decisions. God loves you. Here's a podcast. Here's a sermon. We're doing an outreach this weekend, and you can get training. But here's the beautiful thing about it. Who better to be doing outreach than somebody that's slept on the streets?
And
We,
they need to give back, because
yeah,
all they're
they
thinking about
want-
is themselves. They say, well, what did I do all this for?
They want to give back. I did a donor event. It wasn't a fundraiser, it was a speaking engagement at the Mosse's house 2 Tuesdays ago, and the Owens were there. There's about 50 people there, many that go to this church, and I brought a guy named Ozzie Lubach. Ozzie Lubach graduated in 2018, and he got up and he shared his story. This will be the last thing I say, and then we'll open up questions. He got up and shared his story, and he said that before he came to the mission, he was 9 years living in the Mission Valley riverbed. And he said heroin and meth were his thing, and he just couldn't overcome it. And one day he just realized that he couldn't live like this anymore. He's going to die. So he ended up at the mission, and he went through our program, and he went back to school, and he got certified in plumbing. And when he graduated, he got a job, and he shared with everybody, I've been gainfully employed since I graduated in 2018. He said, not only that, he said, I met a gal in church and we got married. He said, not only that, I bought my first car in my entire life. And I think he's 30 years old, bought my first car. And he said, not only that, but I'm a property owner. I own a condo, he said. Everybody applauded. And he said, and finally, God saw fit, as much as I've messed up my life, to entrust to me another life. And I have a 4-month-old little girl. 9 years in the Mission Valley riverbed, and he put in the work. He wanted to get well, and he's living life completely different than he was 10 years ago.
Amazing story.
So questions, comments, thank you for listening. I could go for another 4 hours. There's so much to tell you, but that's not possible. And so, because you guys got to go. And
Tell us about the shower trailer.
shower trailer is a $100,000 project. We've raised the money for 2 of them. One of them we currently have here. It's a 4-stall trailer that's pulled by a Bill Hohen truck. And we travel around and we make it available to people. Once they come up, they have to get checked in. We put them in the database. We start to learn some things about them. We've purchased another one that'll be here in August. So we'll have a 4-stall trailer that will be associated with North County. We'll have a 4-stall trailer to be associated with South County. And those will be our primary forms of outreach.
Does it have wash machines and stuff? 'Cause I know
No,
there's some-
yeah, there are. We decided not to do that because we wanted to get as many people in as we can, and the washers and dryers take time. I'd like to get to that. There will be washers and dryers at the navigation centers.
Right.
So one of the hooks for us is that, look, we'll give you a shower today, but let's get you in the nav center and we can wash all your clothes.
So
You have to see a case
the
manager.
Navigation center is the one in Oceanside, like Chula Vista and downtown.
National City,
All
yeah.
3 of those.
It'll be Oceanside, National City. Those are already under contract. Our rehab program is downtown. That's the 360 bed facility. The NAP Center is Oceanside, National City, and then somewhere down the road, East County.
Do most homeless have a cell phone?
Most homeless have a cell phone
Yeah, that's
because of
right.
the Affordable Care Act. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Really,
So
but they
do
give
they-
them a cell phone.
so do you message those people?
We do. Well, not as much with the people that we're meeting on the streets.
I mean, as you check them in for these showers, you start the database.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure what
It
programs
seems like
does
it
with
would be
that.
a
Yeah, it
natural
does.
thing to
Yeah,
do.
it's a great suggestion.
To weave it in and get them started, because you fed them
Yeah.
with the shower.
Yeah,
And now you feed them again with
Yeah.
messages and come back.
that's right. That's right. Just to create that constant communication.
It's very hopeful. I've never listened to anyone who had such a handle
Hmm.
on the homeless issue before you arrived here today. It's very hopeful. And I was wondering, is there any overlap with human trafficking or any of
There,
those issues?
there is, and those are challenges. They're obviously safe when they're in our program because, they have a key card and they can get in and out of the building and we know where they're going when they leave. You just can't come and go. You actually have to have permission from your case manager, which we call an advocate. And so they're obviously safe when they're in our facility. And then part of what we deal with, their own trauma comes out through case management. We have a whole therapy department. I have a licensed, therapist, PhD, Dr. Rosalind Eatman, that works for us, and she's got 2 therapists, and then we have 12 interns that we get from local colleges and seminaries that need hours. And when you're a student that needs more intense training and counseling, then you get access to our therapy department.
I was curious about, one of my sons works for a nonprofit called The People Concern up in LA.
Mhm.
So they do a lot of work with homeless, et cetera. But when there's an issue with a mental disability or mental illness, what happens with the San Diego Rescue Mission? What do you do?
Yeah, there are some people we can't help because they can't live in a community. We just went through the weekend. We had a big outreach meal yesterday, but I probably last night had 4 staff in the entire building for the entire night. So these are people, we're taking in people that can live by rules and want to be there, don't want to get kicked out. We don't take in the severely handicapped, unfortunately. We don't take in the severely mentally ill. That's not us. I think that there are programs for those. And when we find somebody that we say, look, this probably isn't the right program for you, then we're able to refer them to. But the reality of it is there's not enough programs. I mean, if the government really wants to help, what they should be doing is spending their money on affordable housing and hospitals, mental health hospitals that we closed down back in the 80s. We need those. I would tell you that 20%, 15 to 20%, and this is my sense, I don't have raw data for you, but my sense is from talking to the experts that there's 15 to 20% of the people who are living on the streets that really need to be in a mental hospital. But the rest of them, we can help. We can help.
Because I know that's one thing that makes the work that you do and so on. When my son was home and working virtually and working with social workers, and he would have cases in emergency room physicians and such, he'd be in touch with someone.
Mhm.
Well, maybe that Vietnam veteran who's homeless lost his phone that they had given him, and they finally found a spot for him, or the woman, they finally in her 60s found a spot for her, hospice because of the progression of her cancer, but she couldn't leave the streets because she had cats to take care of.
Yeah.
So, and so my son's talked to some of the social workers or the nurses, and they said, will you please tell her you'll do it? That's not good enough.
No.
She's the only one who can take
That's
care of
right.
this cat.
That's
So,
right.
like you said, that need for the services in mental hospitals.
It's enormous. Any other questions?
The 2 properties that you came by in Nashville City and up there in Oceanside, how did you get those?
Well, Oceanside, we were looking for a building and just kept striking out, probably looked at 10 buildings from Warner Springs to the coast of Oceanside and just couldn't find something that would allow us to get the CUP. And then the city decided, because the homeless problem is such an issue in Oceanside, they've been in the news every day for 5 years, that they would buy a building and they would ask a service provider to run it. And so we said, we'll run it, but we don't want your money because we have a certain way to we like to do things. Now, those navigation centers will not be mandatory faith-based. We're gonna take a long game here.
Okay.
There will be devotions, there will be chapels. We will only hire believers in Jesus Christ, so there'll be plenty of influence. But we're not gonna make you do anything at the navigation centers other than see a case manager. And
Is that because you're working with a public organization?
it is. It
Is
is.
the homeless population immigration related at all?
Not too much. No, surprisingly. You know, when we had the border crisis 3 or 4 years ago, right before COVID, when it got like out of control, I actually had a meeting with my leadership team to say, what are we going to do? Because they're going to be standing at our door in days, and it never happened.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Question,
it
isn't it?
never happened. Yeah.
I just, sort of talking too much, but I went to a presentation about, people trafficking from, oh gosh, I've forgotten her name, the attorney, the lady. And it was really fascinating because it's the same with the people trafficking here. You assume that they're all people from other countries, but most of the people that are trafficked are actually US citizens.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it's because I guess we're a navy, a military base, and there's a lot of conventions, so that there's a lot of people around that get trafficked.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's quite interesting.
Donnie, do you have an ask for this group?
Get involved. I think if everybody does something, then we can actually change the state of homelessness. And changing the state of homelessness for me isn't that we're going to eliminate it or someday there's going to be nobody that's homeless. It just means that there's going to be less people living on the streets in the years ahead than there are today. I think we can change that. I really do. But we're going to have to build a system. Lots of ways to be involved. I had 100 volunteers at the mission yesterday helping us feed the homeless, not our students, but people right off the streets. Raw. I'm telling you, raw. Denny and Barbara Metzel were there. I see he's on this call. And they came down and served. And then last week alone, I had 250 volunteers that were there serving meals. They were mopping hallways, spending time with our students, all kinds of opportunities. This is probably our #1 volunteer opportunity. It's called an ICU kit. And the ICU is really for us, not for them. It's about us beginning to see them, not walking past them, not looking past them. And then it is just hygiene material. There's Bomba socks, there's antibacterial solution, there's shampoo, there's soap, and then there's all our information on the front. And we gave out 11,000 of these last year. And you can put these together here. You can come down to the mission and put these together. You can take them and give them out. So many ways to be involved. And again, not a government problem to fix. This is our issue, especially the church. This is our issue to resolve. So that'd be my answer.
Can we buy a few of those?
There you go. It's free.
Okay, thank you.
I can get you boxes of those. So you just have to.
Well, I'm happy to donate to it. I give them out when I get a chance.
That's
It's not
great.
always safe.
Yeah, we ask you guys to put these in your car when you see somebody that just say, hey, what's your name? My name's Donnie, and I know an organization that can help you if you want to be helped.
Our church,
When we make those here.
we mean, I was gonna say that,
Yeah.
church,
Yeah.
not like that, but
Yeah,
like a backpack. like
Yeah.
similar.
Similar. We started off that was your vision. We shared
Yeah.
that next it. And
yeah.
my question for you is, the hotels that the city has bought, smaller hotels up in Mira Mesa area.
Yeah.
Has that been a good move, step in the right direction?
Well, yeah, except it's not enough. So you have these tents that we put up downtown, run by some other service providers. Every single person in those tents thinks they're getting one of those hotel rooms. There's not enough of them.
Right.
So they're hanging around doing nothing, not changing anything, believing that their number is going to be called and they're going to get one of these rooms.
It's a mystery.
Yeah. So this is just a bad plan. It's just a bad plan.
Well, net bottom line, you still have these buildings that we can absorb some of the homeless through that and is there a transition plan attached to those people going to those?
So how do they eat? Where do they, how do we pay for that? How do you provide
There's not a
security?
total program on those?
I mean, there will be wraparound services, but it's going to have to be community eating. There aren't washers and dryers and there's showers, but there's not washers and dryers and an oven and things like that inside these units. These are hotel rooms, not apartments. So I think it can be helpful so long as it's so long as there's a broader plan for how we're gonna help the majority, because they're all lined up thinking that they're gonna get one of them. There was a guy on I'll send the interview to Bill, but I got interviewed on NBC this week, and they interviewed a guy that's living on the streets. His name is Umberto. And the reporter asked him, would he go into a shelter? Because the San Diego Rescue Mission's got this big plan to build shelters. And he said, I don't want no shelter. I want my money. What money? I want my money. There's actually a mentality out there that there's people thinking that they're going to get housing, that they're going to get money, that the government's going to solve this for them, and they're going to be sadly disappointed.
Yeah.
Sadly disappointed. And unfortunately, they've lost all this time to really maybe change their situation. And my response to that, because he told me that's what Umberto said, is that I realized that there's a lot of people living on the streets that have had a bad shelter experience. But that's something we're going to have to fight against. I don't think they've had our experience where we're going to love you and we're going to tell you Jesus loves you and that he hasn't forgotten about you, and give him a chance because he'll change your life.
Amen.
Wow.
Thank you guys for
Thank
letting me
you so
come
much.
in. Yeah, a lot of fun.
In prayer, either one of you?
Can I pray?
Please.
So God, thanks for this healthy conversation, this amazing group of men and women that seem so interested in this issue, Lord. And I know this issue interests you. And I know, Lord, that you could snap your fingers and could change this, because nothing is impossible for you. But also know, Lord, that you want us involved in your work. And so, Lord, this is complicated. It's overwhelming. It's exhausting. Sometimes we wonder what really is working. So continue to shine light on that. Show us what you want done, Lord. These are your people. We're all your children. And Lord, we know that the ground is level at the foot of the cross. And so whether I live in the biggest house or I live on the streets, Lord, you love us all the same. And I pray, Father, that you'll allow us to communicate that in an amazing way so that we see people's lives changed, and our whole community has to take notice that you changed our homeless situation in San Diego. Thanks for the sweet time with these people. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much for coming.
Donnie, one last question. The people that are begging at the, coming off the freeways and that this